They're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Nancy Guthrie case takes a stunning turn. Nancy Guthrie latest news reveals sheriff cutoff. The sheriff is no longer speaking directly with the family. That single detail may be one of the most surprising developments in a case that has already generated months of questions, theories, and intense public attention. More than 100 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home in Arizona's Catalina foothills, the lead local official on the case has confirmed that communication with the family is now being handled by the FBI. Not shared. Not coordinated. Handled by the FBI. And for many observers following this investigation, that raises an immediate question. Why? Because in most major investigations, maintaining communication with the victim's family is considered one of the most important responsibilities of the agency leading the case. Families need updates. Investigators need cooperation. Information flows in both directions. Yet now, according to recent statements, that direct line appears to have changed. The sheriff remains the official authority overseeing the investigation. The case was never formally transferred away from his office. Yet the family is no longer hearing directly from him. At the same time, another notable shift appeared in the sheriff's public comments. For months, the message focused on confidence, progress, determination. Now, a different phrase has entered the conversation. Cold case. The sheriff stated that if laboratories eventually determine there is nothing more they can do with the evidence, then the investigation could face that possibility. He also emphasized that they are not there yet. DNA analysis continues. Other forensic examinations remain active. According to him, investigators still believe progress is being made. But the mere acknowledgement of that possibility marks a significant change in tone. This is a case that attracted national headlines from the beginning. Federal resources were deployed. Television networks covered every development. Public interest surged across the country. For a case of this magnitude, even mentioning the possibility of a cold case carries weight. Former investigators analyzing the situation have pointed to the communication change as particularly unusual. Their argument is simple. When an agency opens a case and retains primary authority, maintaining contact with the victim's family is generally expected. Families are often considered essential partners in an investigation. They provide information, context, and support. They also deserve direct updates whenever possible. So if communication has shifted entirely to federal authorities, observers naturally want to know what prompted that decision. Some experts suggest the case may have entered a phase involving specialized federal resources or investigative techniques. Others speculate the family may feel more comfortable receiving information through federal channels. Whatever the explanation, the change has become one of the most discussed developments in recent weeks. Adding to the intrigue is the status of the forensic evidence. The sheriff indicated that investigators continue working to identify an unknown DNA contributor connected to evidence recovered during the investigation. While details remain limited, analysts familiar with similar cases note that modern DNA investigations often extend far beyond traditional testing. In some situations, investigators use advanced genetic genealogy methods. These techniques can involve building family connections through available genetic databases and constructing extensive family trees to narrow possible identities. The process is painstaking. It can take weeks, sometimes months. And while it has helped solve numerous high-profile cases in recent years, it is rarely fast. That may explain why investigators continue expressing cautious optimism despite the passage of time. Meanwhile, outside experts continue debating what happened during the early hours surrounding Nancy's disappearance. One former investigator has argued that the available evidence points away from a simple burglary scenario. His reasoning centers on the difference between theft and abduction. A burglary typically involves entering a property, taking items, and leaving as quickly as possible. If something unexpected happens, the goal is usually escape. An abduction requires something entirely different. Planning, control, transportation. A strategy for moving another person from one location to another. According to this line of thinking, those are not decisions usually made in a moment of panic. They suggest preparation before arrival. That interpretation remains an opinion, not an official conclusion. Investigators have not publicly identified suspects or announced a definitive theory. Still, the discussion continues because of evidence that has drawn attention since the beginning of the case. One frequently discussed detail involves the security camera at the property. The theory proposed by some analysts is that concealing a vehicle may have been more important than concealing a face. A masked individual can hide personal features. A vehicle, however, can potentially reveal make, model, year, travel patterns, and sometimes even ownership information. Modern investigative technology can extract remarkable amounts of information from vehicle footage. That reality has led some observers to wonder whether preventing vehicle identification may have been a priority. Again, this remains interpretation rather than confirmed fact. But it reflects the kinds of questions investigators routinely examine when reconstructing criminal events. Another major focus has been surveillance footage. According to public statements, authorities have collected enormous quantities of video from businesses, traffic cameras, residential systems, and other sources. The challenge is scale. Thousands of recordings. Countless vehicles. Hours upon hours of footage. The task becomes identifying which moments matter and which do not. Some investigators prefer starting with known time windows and working outward. Others advocate cataloging everything first and narrowing later. Different professionals often have different approaches. But everyone agrees on one point. The amount of digital evidence involved is enormous. And somewhere within that evidence may be information capable of changing the entire direction of the investigation. The reward offered in connection with the case has also become a subject of discussion. Despite significant publicity and a reward exceeding $1 million, no publicly announced breakthrough has emerged. For some analysts, that fact itself is noteworthy. Large rewards frequently generate tips. Sometimes useful, sometimes not. Yet major developments tied directly to the reward have not been publicly revealed. Whether that means little or a great deal remains impossible to know from the outside. Investigators often possess information that cannot be shared without jeopardizing the case. And that reality leads back to the issue that started this entire discussion. Communication. The sheriff says the family is frustrated. The sheriff says the FBI is now handling direct contact. The sheriff says laboratories continue working evidence that may eventually provide answers. Taken individually, each statement is significant. Together, they suggest a case that remains active, complicated, and far from resolved. More than 3 months after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, investigators continue analyzing DNA, reviewing surveillance footage, examining forensic evidence, and pursuing leads. No suspect has been publicly identified. No definitive explanation has been announced. And many of the biggest questions remain unanswered. Who took Nancy? Why was she targeted? What happened after she left her home? And will the forensic evidence provide the breakthrough investigators have been waiting for? For now, those answers remain unknown. What is known is that the investigation continues, the FBI remains heavily involved, and the family is still searching for the truth. The case has entered a stage where patience, forensic science, and careful investigative work may matter more than public speculation. And until authorities provide definitive answers, every new development will continue to attract attention from people hoping that the next update finally brings clarity to a mystery that has now lasted more than 100 days.